this stuff. But, again, we already come to conclusion. I already mentioned this earlier on the show. People who have been on extended stays on the space station, when they come back, when they do the test on them, they have trouble walking. Their muscles have deteriorated. Their hearts have, enlarged because of, being in no, gravity and all this stuff. Yeah. The brains have physically shrunk. They don't know if they'll grow back to their normal size and weight and size. It tells me that we're not made to be out in space. Now, unless there is devices on the spacecraft or on the moon, that create enough for a human life could, survive for extended period of times. But why would we want to even think about talking about going to Mars? Before we go to Mars, I would think common sense. We would go to the moon, create a moon station, live on it for a while, and see how humans adapt to that. Before we go, even think about going to Mars, something isn't making sense here.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a claim here, and that is that we've been totally lied about the moon. First of all, one of the pictures you saw here had green vegetation up there. And I also have another picture that shows a very light blue haze across the horizon of the moon. There just may be an atmosphere up there, because I also have a video somewhere that shows a small tube coming out of the ground. That was taken from the lunar orbiter. The tube coming out of the ground and the black smoke that drifting off in one direction. If there was no air and there was smoke coming out of there, the smoke would go off in all directions.
You're right. That's what James was saying. And I was, in my mind, because I've been told repeatedly since I'm old, I'm 68 years old, but ever since I was a kid, I was told there's no atmosphere, there's no oxygen, no nothing on the moon. And it made me, okay, so James, right, James, you were talking about this one picture. It looked like a smokestack with smoke coming out.
Well, it's actually a video. It's a video of the Apollo when it's orbiting very close to the moon, and it shows a smokestack which would be actually about a mile high, and there's smoke coming out of it. I mean, it's out there. It looks legit to me. I don't know.
Wow, that's wonderful. I have so hard time finding people that actually done that kind of research to see it. That's wonderful.
Well,
I don't.
Oh, go ahead, James.
I was just going to say I can't say that it's fake or not, but I have seen that video in different throughout the years through different documentaries and legit ones. So it makes me really think, what is that? I do know that. The size of it, they say it would have to be like a mile high, like with some of these structures that they're seeing, or these satellite discs, where they would be huge.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it, the moon, if you look at the composition of it, we know that the moon is approximately 400 million years older than Earth. And that tells me that it was not even formed in the same cloud of dust that Earth was. It came from somewhere else. And there's other indications to that fact. And try to wrap your head around this one. We know the size of Earth. We know what it weighs and the gravity that it puts out. We know the size of moon, and we know the composition of it, so we know the weight of the moon. We know how fast it is going around Earth. And because of that circle around Earth, we know how much centrifugal force is being swung out away from Earth. So if you put all those numbers into a computer, it doesn't come out. The moon cannot be in this perfectly circular orbit. It cannot stay there, because it would, according to gravity and centrifugal force, it would be flying away from Earth. But if it was about 2/3 further out, it could stay there. But since it isn't out there, it is here. there is another way it could stay there, and that is if the moon is hollow, then it makes perfect sense that it could have the orbit that it has.
Now, when you're saying hollow, is it like a spaceship type of hollow or something else?
It very likely is a form of spaceship that was flown here and parked in orbit. And in fact, in 1970, there was a Russian scientist, I think his name was Mikhail Vasin Alexander Sherbakov. Yeah, that was Sherbakov. He quoted in Sputnik magazine, he said, "The moon is of extraterrestrial origin and was placed there a long time ago and is not completely natural." I think what he meant by not completely natural is that it is a shell that over billions of years has accumulated all this dust on the surface of it, rocks and whatever. Because when NASA dropped one of their spaceship on the surface, it rang like a bell for hours and hours afterwards. And it could not have done that if it was solid. It had to be a space inside for it to ring like that. So that is enough to convince me, besides all the other stuff that I've seen up there.
Well, do you think that it came there to watch our planet, basically? And again, our time goes by really fast. As I was saying earlier, and I've been saying it lately, it seems like the older you get, time goes way faster. When you're a kid, a day seems like ever, a week seems like months, a month seems like a year. But when you get in your 60s, a day seems like hours, a week seems like a day. I don't know. See, again, our year to something else, another whatever, could be matter of minutes in our time. So it makes me wonder, are we a zoo and they're watching us? Or what is going on?
I think you got it. And maybe time to them is not the same as us, because maybe they can manipulate time. When I get up in the morning, by the time I brew myself a cup of coffee and turn around, bingo, it's noon. It's almost to that point. But here is something that I think everybody out there should think about. And I would recommend for the listeners to get themselves a piece of paper and a pen, because I might be saying things from time to time here that you want to write down and go get your hands on, and especially this one. There is a document that you can get from NASA if you write to them. Go to nasa.gov, and there's a place on there where you can apply for different things from them under the Freedom of Information Act. Use that page anyway, even though if it isn't necessarily under the Freedom of Information Act, because it is a little faster.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, there is a document called the Chronological Catalog of Lunar Events. Now, that was a document that was put together back in the 70s, I think, and it was by a NASA officer. He studied for 18 months all the pictures and activities that was being reported on the moon. And also he studied what the Russians gave us for pictures and other things that private people with big telescopes had seen on the moon. He studied it all for 18 months, and he came out. And he made this, and this was, the guy's name was Joseph F. Bloomerich, and in fact I wrote this down to make sure I got it right for you. He's a leading engineer at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. He studied this for 18 months, and he said, and I quote, "The moon and Earth are and have been visited on a regular basis by extraterrestrial beings."
Interesting.
So, technically, we've had disclosure. On top of that, the president of the Russian Federation, Medvedev, on live camera, he was asked if he had been told anything about UFOs, and he said, well, of course. When we take office, he said, we get this dossier explaining about the UFOs and the alien presence, but we are told not to say anything about it because they are afraid of panic.
I think
he said that online.
I was going to say, I would say, a lot of people, when I say that if something happened, I think they would be mass panic. And I get a lot of guests, especially in UFO. Oh, no, people are already, realize that. I think if it ever came out and that we have been lied to repeatedly for many, many years, that things are going on like abductions, UFOs, things, bases on the dark side of the moon and all this stuff, I think would freak out people like you wouldn't believe.
Some, especially the ones that is buried in religion, they may not like it. But on the other hand, I think people are waking up in hordes right now. And I don't think it would be that bad. I really don't think so. Because we have been conditioned, by movie theaters and all kinds of other stuff. Half of it is probably fake, but we don't know which half it is.
That's true. So, how about the people who claim that they were in the secret Space Force and that we have already been on the moon, we've already been on Mars, we got bases on Mars and all this stuff? What do you think about that? Because there's a lot of people, including up here in my state, Washington, there's a lawyer, a famous lawyer up in Longview, Washington, who claimed that when he was a young kid, he was taken and he was put into the secret Space Force.
Yeah. And I am totally convinced that is true. Because this was something there was a book written back in the 1970s by somebody that went after and tried to find out where all the scientists disappeared to. The book was called, I think it was Alternative 3. And that book explained that there were especially scientists that were single guys or single women that had no special ties to family, so they suddenly disappeared one day. And 3 or 4 years later, some of their family got a picture from them and saying, hey, I'm okay, I'm over here doing this project. It's a government project, I can't talk about it, but I'm okay. And then there were one time that 2 of these people, I got these notes from some scientists that disappeared. They compared pictures, and it was the same background in those 2 pictures with a bird sitting in the exact same spot. So we know that the same background was used for 2 different scientists, telling their families that they were okay. And this is what it talks about in the book. They evacuated these scientists to Mars to start building a base up there. And that is what it appears as it is to me. They are actually doing this. And if you looked at one of the other the documentaries I sent you, you can see trees on Mars. And the second picture into the documentary, you see a little alien standing there 20 feet from the rover.
Yeah, I've seen that. And hey, we need to hold on for a break here for about 2 minutes, so I'm going to put you on hold. We'll be back where the stations can do their little thing, and we'll be back with our guests talking about, the moon and all that stuff. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
you and I were living in the